Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and last week when I was making the case for why you should consider owning an ES-335 style instrument, I asked you guys what guitar you wanted me to go over next. A few of you replied in the comments, and you said the Gibson ES-339. Now there's only one problem with that. I no longer own that guitar. I sold it a few months ago, but I did own it for a few years. I got to know it really well. I know what it's good at, what maybe it's not so good at, and what you can expect to do it. Now, obviously, there's not going to be any playing of a 339 in this video because I ain't got one to play. But if you're interested, I'll leave a link to a video up here, and I'm going to reference a few other videos inside of this one where there's more playing of that specific guitar. But where to start with that guy and what drew me to it to begin with is simple: weight. I wanted a Les Paul sounding instrument that did not weigh what a normal Les Paul would weigh. The Gibson ES-339 that I had weighed under 7 pounds, but it still sounded absolutely gigantic, and it takes gain like a champ because similar to its big brother, the 335, it also has the center block going down the middle to resist against some of that unwanted feedback. Now, tonally, most people would assume that the 339 is going to sit somewhere between the Les Paul and the 335. I can tell you, though, from firsthand experience, it leans way more towards the Les Paul than it does the 335. It simply does not have that huge nature to it that the 335 does, but it adds a little bit extra to a Les Paul. So really, I'd say it's much more comparable to one of those than a 335. But if you're interested in hearing a direct comparison between a Gibson Memphis ES-335 and a Gibson Memphis ES-339, I did do a video on that. I also showed you the size differences of the two of them in my hands. That video will be up here. And as far as the playability of that guitar, it did ring out very well acoustically. So if you're looking for something, like I said last week with the 335, that you don't necessarily need to plug in to get really inspiring sounds out of, this is also a very good option in that aspect. And I already mentioned, if you're somebody that's concerned about having a guitar that's very heavy for whatever reason that is, this is a really good way to get Les Paul style sounds without that being a problem. However, comfort-wise, really nice guitar, really played well, but there was one thing that you should know about this specific instrument that could be a problem depending on what you play. Last week when I was talking about the 335 and comparing it to the Les Paul, I went over how you have way better access to the upper frets just because of where the body actually meets the neck. On the 339, upper fret access is extremely limited because of that. It's much more like a Les Paul. Anything, it's actually almost a little bit worse just because of the actual shape that goes into it to reach that 22nd fret or that area. If you're somebody who plays up there, maybe this won't be the perfect kind of fit for you. But if you're somebody who likes to play rhythm guitar or, you know, kind of stay around the 12th fret or below, it's something you really don't have to worry about too much, and it just absolutely sings. I like that guitar a lot. But if you're in the market for a 339, they're a bit of a lesser produced model, so you might not have as many to choose from, and certainly not as many of them that will come in the satin with the blocks like the model I had. I believe that was only from 2014 to 2017 with the satin models. Otherwise, you're gonna be spending a bit of chunk of change trying to get to that. But if that doesn't bother you and you're somebody that's okay with the dots, you can still find these guitars for about $2,000 in really good condition used, and at that point, it seems like a really good alternative. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't want to shell out the money for the Gibson version, or maybe you just don't like Gibson at all, you do have a few other alternatives from other brands. D'Angelico make their Mini DC. That guitar is a very reasonable price. You have Eastman. They make, I believe it's called the 184, is their version of the 339 style instrument. And also the 77 Guitars, the Japanese brand that I have the 335 style instrument from, they have a model called the Albatross, which is very small like the 339, and it is outstanding. I'm gonna close this video by giving one piece of advice to anybody who might be considering a 339 but wants a 335 sound out of it. you're looking at the wrong guitar. It's not going to do it. It took me a long time to come to terms with it, but after playing them back to back in various different models from various different factories, it's just, the size really does matter in that aspect. I know it sounds silly for me to say that, but it really is true. The 339 is its own thing. It's awesome. It can cover a wide variety of tones, just like a Les Paul could, maybe even a little bit more because of the airiness to it. Just adds a little bit more so than a regular Gibson Les Paul, but it's never gonna have that huge factor to it that the 335 does. But next week, I think we're gonna be going over our first Paul Reed Smith guitar. That should be a lot of fun. I know that will be very divisive. People either love or they loathe the Paul Reed Smith instruments. However, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, let me know what you think about the 339, or if you have a 339 style instrument that isn't made by Gibson, let me know who it is, or if I left one out when I was going over other alternatives. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you tomorrow for another guitar related video. Take it easy, everybody.